This is Father Leo with Plating Grace, reaching out to all of you because I know that the coronavirus has been on everyone's hearts and minds, and it's really affected our celebration of our faith because sometimes fear can take over rational thinking. And let's just admit that there is still so much that we need to learn about this virus, and unfortunately, it has to some degree been politicized. However, in order to minimize any of the negative effects and to help avoid getting people sick, the church has had to take some necessary precautions. I know that in Italy, they closed all of the churches down. Spoke with a few friends of mine there, and they say that the church is open for private prayer. And I know that in Poland, they have done something very unique. They've actually increased the number of masses so that all of the faithful can come and have a little bit more space between them so they're not so jammed together. One way or the other, we have to recognize that a decision to go to Mass or to not go to Mass is determined on a formed conscience. And right now, it almost seems like there is a hype to deform conscience. The fact is, because we don't know everything about this virus, we have to take precautions. But if it is stunting our ability to live without fear, then we need to strengthen our understanding of what the fear is about. And it's a fear of dying. And I know that this is something that a lot of people don't want to talk about, but I certainly recommend that this becomes an opportunity for all of us to memento mori, to remember that we're going to die. If you come with me to Rome on a pilgrimage, I could take you to a church dedicated to the Immaculate Conception or the Assumption. I know it's a Marian church. And underneath are Franciscans have the bones of thousands of monks, and they're kind of displayed to create artwork. I know that sounds kind of creepy, but it's just true. They have altars, they have chandeliers, they have light fixtures, decorations, you name it, made out of the bones of basically dead monks. And at the very end of this tour, there is a monk skeleton with a hood over its head, and it says in a few different languages, "What you are now, we once were. What we are now, you will one day be." It's frightening because the truth can be frightening. We are going to meet our Maker, but between now and then, we have the responsibility to live in grace and to live with the fear of the Lord, but not a fear to live our life fully in the Lord. And so, here's just some recommendations. If you are elderly and you are prone to sickness, probably the best thing for you to do won't be to self-quarantine, because that word just sounds absolutely frightening, but take the necessary precautions and stay at home in order to avoid contact with people who might be sick. That's just all there is to it. But in the same time, make sure you're staying in touch with people, so just give them phone calls. These are the opportunities in our world's history when we start to pay attention to relationships and how we can be strengthened by just a simple phone call. So if you know people who are elderly, why don't you just give them a call and let them know that you're thinking of them and praying for them, and perhaps even just make them some soup and just leave it for them so that they can pick it up, in a safe and in a healthy way. If you have children who are susceptible to being sick, the same thing applies. Just taking the necessary precautions. If you are nervous about going to Mass because it's crowded and it is the flu season still, then here's what I recommend. Because in your conscience, you know yourself well enough. If you're going to get prone to sickness, this is not an excuse for you to give up God and to not make the Sabbath day holy, but it is an opportunity for you to recognize that Christ is the divine physician. So you can stay home, but you can also participate in Mass just by watching it on TV. Or if you don't have access to that, you can always read the readings and write your own homily, is what I say. Because the homily simply is a word that means familiar conversation. You can have a conversation with your family about the readings and how it impacts all of us, especially in a time when we really need to hear the Word of God telling us, be not afraid. If you can't receive communion, and besides, we do have prescriptions on receiving communion, then what we say is make a spiritual communion. That means hunger for the Lord. See if your church is still open so you can go and pray quietly and alone in front of the Blessed Sacrament. These are these moments in our country, in our world's history, when our hunger for God has to change the way we look at church, because the church is not a hotel for saints. It's a hospital for sinners. And it's a place where we have done so much good to help fight sicknesses in the past. And what I hope that this message would do something for you is that it would strengthen your relationship with God and your relationship with the church and your relationship with one another. Do not let the coronavirus give you fear, but hopefully give you faith, because faith is what sets us free, and faith in Jesus is what heals us. God bless you, and hopefully you will be plating grace for your family in this very unique time in our world's history.